Welcome back to the deep dive. We received a really interesting document from you all. It's called Oversimplification and Judgment, dated April 19th, 2025. And that's what we're diving into today, really trying to uh, get to grips with why we simplify complex stuff and, jump to conclusions.
Absolutely. And what that actually means for, really understanding things properly.
Right. So it's about these mental shortcuts we use, isn't it? When they help and maybe when they don't.
Exactly. The document lays out these two key ideas. Oversimplification, boiling complex things down, ignoring the gray areas, thinking black and white.
Generalizations, slogans, stereotypes, that kind of thing.
Precisely. And then judgment, those quick evaluations, often moral ones, we make without maybe having all the facts.
Often driven by our own biases or emotions, yeah.
Absolutely. Our values, our feelings, they all play into it.
Okay, so the document points out straight away, this isn't just bad thinking, is it?
No, not inherently. It calls them mental shortcuts or heuristics. Basically, our brains trying to cope with a world that throws a lot of information at us.
Right, trying to be efficient.
That's the core idea. Efficiency often wins out over complete accuracy. Our brains are trying to save energy.
Cognitive load, the document calls it.
That's the term. Oversimplification reduces the effort needed to process everything. It's like scanning headlines instead of reading the full article. You get the gist.
But you miss the crucial details, the nuance. Makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel that when I'm overwhelmed with information, just wanting the simple version.
We all do. And another big driver is this thing called the need for closure.
Okay, what's that?
Well, humans generally don't like uncertainty. We find ambiguity uncomfortable.
Yeah, definitely.
So oversimplifying or making a quick judgment, right, wrong, good, bad, it gives us a feeling of clarity, a sense of resolution.
Even if that clarity is, well, artificial.
Exactly. It scratches that itch for a definite answer, even when the situation is messy.
I recognize that feeling. And then there's the in-group, out-group bias mentioned. How does that fit in?
Yeah. That's deeply rooted. Think evolutionarily.
Survival instinct.
Kind of. For our ancestors, knowing instantly who was us and who was them was critical for survival. That instinct is still there.
So we still tend to see the world as us versus them.
We often do, yeah. And it leads us to oversimplify and often negatively judge people we see as belonging to the outgroup. It fuels polarization.
Wow, okay. A leftover instinct causing modern problems.
In some ways, yes. And then there's another fascinating concept, moral intuitionism.
Okay.
The idea here, which the source highlights, is that our moral judgments often pop up first, like a gut feeling.
Before we've even reasoned it through.
Often, yes. The reasoning bit comes after to justify the feeling we already had. It's called post hoc rationalization.
So when the document mentions examples like calling someone lazy or evil, that might just be our brain quickly slapping a label on something to explain a gut feeling of, say, disapproval.
Precisely. It creates that simplistic mental clarity. It resolves an emotional tension like, okay, I understand why I feel bad about this because they're wrong, bad, lazy.
Even if the reality is way more complicated, like seeing a news headline, feeling angry, and immediately blaming one group without digging deeper.
Exactly that. It's a quick fix for that uncomfortable feeling.
Okay, so we see why our brains default to this. But then, how are these tendencies exploited? How do people use oversimplification and judgment persuade us?
Right. This is where it gets really interesting and, frankly, sometimes manipulative.
Yeah.
The source points to several areas. Think about marketing first.
Okay.
Brands are masters of this. They create simple associations. Nike equals ambition, right? Apple means creativity.
Yeah, it's like identity shorthand. Quick, easy associations.
Totally oversimplified, of course, but incredibly effective for branding.
And in politics, I imagine it's rampant there.
Oh, absolutely. Politics often thrives on it. Sound bites, slogans, build the wall, defund the police, lower taxes for growth.
Simple phrases for incredibly complex issues.
Exactly. They work because they're simple, they bypass detailed understanding and tap straight into those quick judgments and emotions. Less effort required to agree or disagree strongly.
And social media just pours fuel on that fire, doesn't it?
It really does seem to amplify it. The algorithms often reward content that gets a strong emotional reaction.
Oh, rage clicks.
Right. Judgment, whether it's cheering or booing, drives engagement likes, shares, angry comments. Nuance, complexity, that often just gets scrolled past.
It's a system that kind of rewards the simple and judgmental take.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
yes. And the document goes into even darker areas like cult recruitment or propaganda.
How does it work there?
It's a core tactic. Create a really stark divide. You've got the in-group, the enlightened, the chosen.
And everyone else is the out-group, the corrupt, the lost sheep.
Precisely. It reinforces the echo chamber, makes people feel special and united against a simplified enemy. It shuts down critical thinking and nuance completely.
And the document says simplification makes the message stickier.
And judgment makes it sharper, more potent, easier to remember, easier to spread, and it hits harder emotionally.
Wow. Okay, this is a lot. It feels kind of overwhelming, realizing how often this might be happening. How do we even notice when we're doing it, falling into these traps?
That's the crucial next step, isn't it? Self-awareness. The source gives some good cues. One big one is noticing emotional spikes.
Like sudden anger or disgust.
Or even that feeling of smug superiority. When you feel a really strong, intense emotion bubble up about an issue or a person, pause. That intensity can narrow your thinking.
So if I find myself absolutely convinced I'm right and someone else is just plain wrong, that's a warning sign.
Definitely. That feeling of moral righteousness, that absolute certainty about good versus evil is a major red flag. Reality is rarely that simple.
Okay. What else?
Listen for echoes of groupthink. Are you just repeating opinions you've heard from your friends or your online bubble without really thinking them through yourself?
Just nodding along, basically.
Kind of, yeah. And the document offers those brilliant little self-reflection questions.
Right, I like those. Like asking.
What don't I know? Simple but powerful. It forces you to acknowledge gaps.
And what would change if I had more context?
Exactly. Encourages you to zoom out, consider other factors.
And the big one, am I reacting or reflecting?
Yeah. Is this a gut reaction, an emotional burst, or have I actually taken a moment to think it through?
Those are really useful prompts. But, okay, knowing is one thing. Actually changing these habits, resisting that urge, that feels hard. Where do you even start?
It is hard work, you're right. The source is clear about that nuance takes effort. But the goal isn't perfection. It's about cultivating more openness, more curiosity. It's a practice.
Not flipping a switch overnight. Small steps.
Exactly. Small, consistent steps, like pause before opinion. Just take a breath before you jump in, especially online or in a heated chat. Observe your own reaction first.
Okay, I can try that. What else?
Practice empathetic reframe. This is a big one. Actively try to see where the other person might be coming from.
Even if you totally disagree.
Especially then. See them as a whole person, history, fears, hopes, not just a label or an opposing argument. Try to understand the why behind their view.
Okay, understanding the why, not necessarily agreeing with the what.
Precisely. And related to that, stay curious. Swap judgment for questions. Instead of thinking, that's ridiculous, maybe ask yourself, I wonder why they see it that way.
That shifts the energy, doesn't it? From judgment to investigation almost.
It really does. It opens things up instead of shutting them down. Another tactic is to zoom out.
How does that help?
If you're feeling really intensely about something specific, try putting it in a bigger context.
Yeah.
What's the history here? Are there larger systems at play? It can dial down the emotional heat.
Let you see it more clearly, maybe?
Often, yeah. But the source also acknowledges that pull, that temptation to just fall back into judgment because it feels easier.
The path of least resistance.
Right. It gives that quick hit of certainty, that cognitive ease. But, and this is a key quote from the source, what feels good for now doesn't necessarily equate to what's good for growth.
Ooh, I like that. Short-term comfort isn't long-term understanding.
Exactly. Avoiding the effort of nuance might feel better in the moment, but it limits our actual understanding and, our ability to genuinely connect with people and complex issues.
It really does sound like something you have to keep working at, not a problem you just solve.
Absolutely. I love the garden analogy the source uses. You don't just fix a garden once, you tend it continuously.
Pulling weeds.
Exactly. Those weeds are the moments of oversimplification, the quick judgments. We'll all have them. The goal is just to get better at spotting them, quicker at correcting course,
And maybe being gentler with ourselves when we do slip up.
Oh, definitely. Self-compassion is huge. And forgiveness for ourselves and for others. The document stresses this. Being human means being incomplete, imperfect.
It's not a flaw, it's just part of the deal.
Exactly. So extending grace to yourself and others is vital for this whole process.
It feels like this path, choosing complexity, resisting the easy answer, might not get you a lot of applause, though. The source mentions that, the lack of external validation.
That's a really insightful point it makes. It's often a quieter path. You don't usually get cheers for saying, I'm not sure, or, well, it's complicated.
society often prefers the strong, simple take.
It often does. But the source argues, and I think rightly, that what you might lose in that external validation, you gain internally.
In what way?
In integrity. In clarity, real clarity, not the fake kind from oversimplifying. In, ultimately, wisdom.
So the rewards are deeper, maybe less flashy.
I think so. You trade that illusion of certainty for a truer grasp of reality. You trade fleeting approval for a more solid sense of inner peace and intellectual honesty. It's a worthwhile trade-off, arguably.
This has been incredibly helpful. That final thought in the document really encapsulates it all, doesn't it?
It really does. That core tension, our natural, very human pull towards simplicity.
Versus the choice, the harder but maybe more rewarding choice, to embrace complexity.
Yeah. It's that constant dance between our comfort zone and real understanding.
So maybe the thought to leave everyone with is about that contradiction. How could embracing that tension, knowing you want the easy answer but choosing to explore the complexity anyway,
Yeah.
how could that shift things? How you see yourself, how you see the world.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, just for this week, try to notice. Notice when your mind reaches for that simple label, that quick judgment. Just noticing is the first step, right?
Yeah.
Tending that inner garden.